Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us today. And just for the people viewing and listening to this, I want to introduce everyone. We've got Jose Vizquerra, who's the president and CEO of O3 Mining. We've got Justin Reid, CEO of Troilus Gold. We've got Pascal Hamelin, he is CEO of Bonterra, and also Barry Allan, MD and senior mining analyst at Laurentian Bank. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Cool. Well, guys, I wish we'd had this conversation 2 years ago, because I think I've just figured something out. Is that, and actually listening to the stories and speaking to you guys over that time, which is, it feels to me like Quebec mining companies seem to have an unfair advantage compared to other Canadian mining companies, in the sense that the province supports your activities, and then of course you've got banks like Barry's as well, heavily involved. So I just want to explore that one thought. And Barry, if I may come to you first, can you just give us a little bit about your background, and then perhaps we'll kind of dive into some of the things that you get up to at Laurentian Bank?
Yes, by all means, Tom. Laurentian Bank is a Quebec-based chartered bank, and we are the only investment team that operates out of the province of Quebec. But we do cover, we are a national investment platform, and we cover companies worldwide. There are, in our investment group, we have 10 investment bankers. Some might argue that's a big compliment, but there's a lot to do in the province. And that's supported by 4 of us in the research team, of which I'm the managing director of. So we have quite a broad footprint when it comes to mining. And particularly we pride ourselves that Quebec is our backyard. So we like to make sure that we are paying attention to things that are going on in Quebec. When we look at Quebec particularly, and the point that you are asking or have asked, do Quebec based companies enjoy, or even operating companies in Quebec enjoy a competitive advantage relative to other mining companies globally, or even within in a Canadian context? There's no doubt they do. And there's a number of points that we can cite to it. There are a number of mining friendly jurisdictions within Canada, established mining camps. But I think, as one of our colleagues here has just pointed out, Jose has pointed out, probably one of the biggest driving factor about the province of Quebec, not only the Plan Nord, which is a $25 billion investment that Quebec is committed to in roads, power, airstrips in the northern part of Quebec. Quebec, and the particular northern part of Quebec, is a very well-endowed mineral terrain. We have a number of major mineral camps within the province of Quebec. Everyone knows the Abitibi, but James Bay is a very underexplored area, all the way up to the Ungava Peninsula, the Detour Belt. We have major geological endowments which have been underexplored, and with the whole Plan Nord, which Quebec embarked upon in 2011. It was a commitment to spend $80 billion over 25 years, and this is on the promotion of energy. This is the James Bay Power Project, and through that, there's an extensive road network through the north, supported by airstrips, a number of communities that do exist. But on top of that, to allow that plan to continue, one of the key parts, which I think sets Quebec a little bit apart from the rest of Canada, they had to come to a general First Nations agreement about how development is going to work within the province of Quebec. And not every province in Canada has actually done that. So that simplifies the operating infrastructure or protocols around developing of a project. Here in Ontario, we do not have such a thing, and many provinces really don't have that First Nations agreement, which is a nice umbrella to work within. But that's just part of the commitment that the Quebec government have made to, as part of their Plan Nord, to develop a lot of the assets in the north. That is supported, and there's other people who can probably talk better than I, but there's also a very good tax structure that's layered on top of. And we talk about super flow through, which is a very Canadiana thing. I'm sorry to talk about, but for Canadian investors in early stage exploration, Quebec offers some of the best tax incentives through their Quebec-based flow through. For Quebec-based investors investing in assets, they get 120% write-off of their investment. So there is there is more than lip service being applied here to the development of assets in Quebec, and that does put companies operating in Quebec. Political stability, I haven't even talked about. We haven't had a coup in a long time in Canada, and certainly we are, as provinces, a very stable jurisdiction, and we are a mining country. So that provides the added stability compared to an international perspective. A lot of things I talked about is about Quebec within the province of Ontario, but also there is that global aspect, is that we pride ourselves in Canada on being a fairly stable and reasonable jurisdiction in which to do business. So I pass maybe the baton on to one of my colleagues here who really have their feet on the ground and are actually working within the sector and know better firsthand some of these elements that I've talked about.
Appreciate that overview. In fact, that's a fantastic overview. Hadn't actually realized the point about the First Nations. Justin, you've been through a process recently. We just heard from Barry the way that the government supports mining broadly through infrastructure investment, which does have a bottom line effect for the companies in the region. You've been through a process recently where you've got some funding from government bodies, from provincial departments and bodies. So can you tell us about what you had to go through? Was it a long, laborious process, or are they genuinely making it easy?
Well, I think my colleagues on the line would agree. Money's never easy. It's always a lot of work. But what I would say is that even outside of our process, Quebec's established an institutional framework to promote development of assets, full stop, because ultimately that's jobs, taxations, revenue to the province. Cradle to grave, Quebec, via its various pension funds and investment funds, have set up a series of funds that will provide capital for every stage of development, from grassroots hope and a dream, all the way to multi-million, $100 million project finances. And we have the luxury at Troilus, 25% of our institutional ownership right now is Quebec-based. It's Investissement Quebec, the Case, Fonds Solitaire de Quebec, Sidex, Este James Bay, as my colleagues have as well. We went through an intensive, especially with Investissement Quebec, we went through an intensive 5 months due diligence process. It was a deep dive. However, they came in as a major lead order on our last $55 million that we've raised. And the great thing about Quebec government-sponsored investment is that it's there forever, right? They've now committed to your company. They've committed to the growth of your company, and they've committed to see that first bar of gold poured. And so for us, it's a lot of work. But it's certainly well worth it, because you're establishing a really solid foundation in Quebec to build a mine. And I would say a lot of other jurisdictions don't have that nearly like Quebec does.
Well, I think that's the interesting point to me is how the other provinces interact with mining, and I've not heard it the way I've heard it with Quebec. But just on a point of the 5-month diligence process, how are they qualified to work out whether what you've got is good or not? It's not a case. I want to believe as an investor, I've got to protect my investment by de-risking various components here. And if Quebec is just throwing money at you, irrespective of how good the project is, then perhaps it's not as strong as I thought. But what do they do during this 5 months process?
Well, I mean, if you have a bad asset, you still have a bad asset. They have to. The Quebec government is like any institutional investor. They have to have a return on their investment. And so I would not say that this money is a blank check. What I would say is, when you look at Pascal's project and Jose's project, these are all great Quebec development projects. And we're all very lucky to work where we're working and have the skilled labor that we do. But we also have great projects, which I think is bottom line, you have to be able to have a great project. For us, the Quebec government is incredibly sophisticated. This wasn't somebody writing a check saying congratulations. This was the Ministry of Energy and Resources completing a full environmental, social, and technical DD on our work. This is a full environmental audit of the impact that we have now and that we will have in the future. And it was also a social due diligence and social review of what the long-term implications of our industrial entity could be to the province. So it was not like a normal fund manager trying to trade a gold stock. This was investing for the long term.
Fantastic. Okay. Jose, I think Barry touched upon a point there, which I kind of perhaps put sidelined a little bit, but is equally important, which is the physical endowment of the Abitibi region. It's got a long history to when we've spoken in the past. You're a big fan of data and making sure you understand the data to add value to the asset and also to the company. What are you seeing in terms of again the government's interaction with companies like yours in the Abitibi?
I guess I'm very fond of being very technical, but one thing that I would like to say, coming from where I come from, Peru, is that we cannot underestimate the rule of law. And that's the first thing that I would say. If you work in a stable jurisdiction, you cannot take it just as, oh, we're in a stable jurisdiction. It is a very important thing. We're in one of the most stable jurisdictions in the world. And I would not say it's unfair to have Quebec government putting money to. It's actually very fair for their sophistication to understand that by supporting you, they are developing a nation. And it's as simple as that. It's very fair. From there to say, I have the best projects in the world, I want them to be better, and I'm going to be able to serve the others in a much better way. And they understand, as we understand, that we are in a prime jurisdiction. I mean, a jurisdiction where more than 200 million ounces of gold has been produced in the Abitibi, from where probably 120 has been already exploited in Canada, in Quebec particularly. I mean, there has been 124 mines in the Abitibi, to give you an idea. 15 of them has already produced 3.5 million ounces. So I remember my grandfather used to tell me, if you're going to look for elephants, go to a country of elephants. And this is what Quebec is. If we think about also to the endowment that you were saying, going back to that idea, some colleagues tend to say that this is a mature environment. And truly, it is a mature environment. But what do we understand by mature? And I think by mature means that there has been a lot of gold being found. It doesn't mean that there is no more gold to be found. Going to Malartic, for example, Malartic started in the 1900s, 1930s. Then it was kind of rediscovered in the 1980s, going underground, rediscovered again in the early 2000s by Cisco. And then subsequently, Yamana and Agnico made 3 other discoveries in the same area. I mean, and Malartic today produces 600,000 ounces of gold per year. So that is fascinating. I mean, only 12 kilometers from there, we have 2.5 million ounces and we're finding more gold. It's amazing on where we are. And then you go to the next break and you have Troilus with the Chibougamau. You go to the next break and there you have Berry with Windfall and Bonterra on the side. I mean, you are talking about here of one of the, if not the most important greenstone belt in the world. I mean, and if we put it in a ranking, probably as a greenstone belt is the most prolific greenstone belt, period. I mean, there is no discussion.
It's an interesting point you make. So it's not just government, it's the fact that it's got the history, it's got the deposits, and exploration continues to, I guess, add to the answers. So, I mean, Pascal, talk to me a little bit about what you're up to. So maybe just remind folks about the stage that you're at, because you're all at slightly different stages of the build, and and how you're using Quebec contacts, because it seems to be you guys knock on like an open door, where in other provinces it's a case of trying to get noticed. It's there seems to be some sort of relationship from from exploration stage above. And what are you finding, Pascal?
Well, the first thing is whoever start exploration activities in Quebec, there's a tremendous database available to everyone. Geology Quebec, it's a government organization, and all the geology data is there. So for us, for example, in our camp, it's a young camp, okay? So a lot of the drilling, the historical drilling has been to a specific site. So the rest of the camp, we start with the government data, like geophysic map, geological mapping, everything is available to us. So it's not like you're starting with a white page. There's already data available to you. And our geologists are deeply involved with those data. And that's the first step. The next step is then you start to see assistance from, like Justin mentioned, you got government support at different level. For example, when you're early stage exploration, SIDEX is there. You know, they're going to look at your project. They're going to see the potential. They have access to the same database as you do. So there's technical people in all these investment institutions, and they make a wise decision. Okay, do we invest money in that project? Does it have potential? So SIDEX is there in the early days. And then as you grow your project, you get different support coming in. Like us at our stage, SIDEX has been there before. SDBG, Société de Développement de la Beijing, has been there for us before. Now, Caisse de Dépôt is in, you know, a pension fund based from Quebec. And eventually, once the PA is completed and you're closer to advanced to engineering, you're going to have Investment Quebec coming in. You know, we already started the due diligence with Investment Quebec this summer. So we're a few months, maybe a year behind Justin on this. But IQ, Investment Quebec, is taking that route. And we had the technical review committee, the first meeting last week. So you get the support right through all the phase. They want you to be a success. So because they know it's going to bring employment, they know it's going to bring wealth to the province. So they support you through that process, and they know exploration is a risky business. So of course they provide fiscal incentive for Quebecers to invest money in those projects. So and you look at the province, like the land itself, we're just, if you take the entire province, like we're just drilling in the last 80 years, we just drilled the Cadillac Fault. And even within the Cadillac Fault, you got deposits that are being discovered in the last few years. Marben is a good example. Canadian Malartic, that deposit was sitting there for forever. You know, the extraction began in 2010, you know. So a lot of companies were born in Quebec. Agnico Eagle, that's where it came. Teck, Barrick, they all started in Quebec. And then they grew, they became big companies. So now you're starting to see activity, like, and recently you got, in the last 10 years, Cisco has been a successful story coming from Quebec. So, and now, it's a little bit outside of the province, but Kirkland Lake Gold, you know, Detour Gold and Macassa Mine, they're like 60 kilometers from the border. So the camp is phenomenal. Like, there's gold to be discovered still.
Barry, let me ask you about this. We've heard these guys will always be looking at the cost of the money that they bring into their organizations, and clearly government money tends to be a little bit cheaper, but I guess the beauty is the kind of certainty of it being there. Once they're in. What about, and there's a bunch of incentives that have been mentioned there too. Are you as a bank incentivized by the Quebec government in any way? Because you've got to make money. You don't lend your money out any cheaper than to anywhere else, do you?
No, well, you know, I'm the securities part of the bank. I'm not. We're two separate areas. The bank originally was founded on infrastructure build in Montreal, but the securities part, which I am, we work on the same commercial terms that any other investment bank that you'll find in Canada work on. There's no particular incentive for us to get involved in Quebec-based companies. It's just that we feel the Quebec-based companies is a bit of our background, a bit of our backyard. But as Justin pointed out, and I think rightfully so, and then Jose's touched on it, and Pascal as well, if you don't have an asset, you don't have anything. it's a non-starter. So, we look for good investments, and we look for good investments. We pride ourselves on being domestic, Quebec-based domestic, yes, but we look internationally as well. So our focus on Quebec is probably driven more by a better knowledge base that we have of some of the companies, of some of the terrain, some of the issues that we've all touched on to a certain extent that allow for mining companies to do well within that jurisdiction and have a better chance potentially of finding something, not only because of the endowment, but also because of the incentives. And, just back to one of the points that Justin made, and Pascal's touched on it as well. Yeah, you do have a nice layering of government sponsored agencies whose mandates are to help mining in Quebec. And, SIDEX, a good example of FTQ, Case Depot, but they're not what I would call your typical investor. They're more your partner. And what we've seen as well, they do their due diligence, probably a little harder than they would normally. And don't kid yourself, they're a partner. And if there's something that's going on which they find may not be to their liking, you're definitely going to know about it. We certainly, as recommenders of investments of certain kinds, if we get involved in something which is not providing adequate returns, there'll be questions asked. They're partners. They're not shy about making their concerns known. So, to think that this is free money sitting there on the shelf to be invested is far from the truth. You've got to have the asset, you got to have the people, and you're going to have ongoing partnership where they're going to be there and they're going to be paying attention. So, from that perspective, is Quebec better or worse? It's nice to have the money, but sometimes that money does come with a little bit more baggage in the sense you've got more eyeballs focused on it. And for us as an investment bank, we think that's good. But as an investment bank, we just operate globally like any other investment bank.
And one thing that I was going to add into that, and that adds to this idea of, I believe in being very fair, that Quebec actually take advantage for their sophistication. They have been the first ones pushing on ESG, just in a sense, same as us, as pushing for the eco law. That has been very much promoted by this industry that really wants to be at the top of the ladder.
Okay, no, I think that's a good point to make. I think it's critical. But coming back to the partner point, if I may, and Justin, do you see that as unwanted baggage or a sort of necessary evil, or do you welcome it?
You welcome it because they're there when the times are bad. We've all gone through a period where capitalizing our company to drill has been difficult. Equities are depressed. I think the three of us would agree right now, all of our equities are depressed because of where we are in the market. Quebec institutional investment and government investment takes a long-term view, right? They're not trading for a quarter or for a year. They're trading for the long term, and that gives us a real stability. And to further one comment that Barry and Jose made, just jurisdictionally, is skilled labor. We cannot even, the importance of people and the availability of infrastructure is so incredibly important right now, because despite me being in competition with Pascal and Jose is also one of my largest shareholders at the exact same time. And so we've really established a framework of cooperation among developing companies, I found. We're benchmarking costs. We're making sure that we're keeping everybody honest, and Jose's been a huge lead in that. But to say that there are 400 drills going right now in Quebec is probably an understatement. To say that there are skilled miners and laborers and mine developers and everything we need, yes, we're going to be exposed to inflation like everybody else, and we're all getting exposed to inflation right now. However, if you want to do it, there's a way to do it, and I think that's a huge benefit to working not only in Canada but Quebec.
Right. Thank you for that. I mean, Jose, you've just got a bunch of money in the bank at the moment. You're kind of not going to be out raising capital anytime soon, and the drill bit is turning. So that's all good news. But given the relationship that you've got with Troilus, and it's I would say this: these are three companies I've enjoyed listening to stories of. So I think it's not a case of competition. I think all of the above is equally investable, quite frankly. But with your relationship with Troilus, there's any learnings there for further down the line when the time comes where you do want to plug into the kind of provincial government funding ecosystem?
You know what? Maybe this is a matter of age, in a sense. I mean, I think that with Pascal and Justin, there is a very frank and very open conversation. And although, yes, we still compete for capital, and we still compete for having a larger market cap, they were pretty open and frank in our relationships and in exchanging communication, which really, it's going to be part of driving the change in the industry as well. I think for many years, our predecessors kept everything in silos, and that certainly didn't allow us to develop our projects in a much better way. Right now, we started talking among different exploration companies in Quebec on where are their costs, so we can all maintain our cost kind of level where we all know where we are. So it's way to protect ourselves. And I think that is something that has not been seen before. And everyone, when we were talking about that, we're like, okay, we'll do. And that is fantastic. I think that cooperation is part of what we will see as a big change in Quebec. And that goes then people to geologists, to some of our guys will know more about geophysics and can be lent to someone else to look into something in particular. Some other guys may know more about geochemistry. And of course, if we're exploring around, I'm not going to tell them where is the other deposit, but there is cooperation, and that is very important.
And Pascal, what are you seeing on the ground? Because there's been a lot of M&A activity recently. We've seen some big stories and some mid-tier stories out there. Do you think that this kind of precious metal pressure that you're seeing will see a lot more either new entrants coming into the region, into Quebec, or do you think that some companies are going to have to come together just to kind of get through this period that we're going through?
I think you're going to see both. You saw the transaction this week, KL and Agnico. Agnico's got a lot of operation in the Cadillac Fault. And but you see the majors, the other majors in the world, all saying they want to come to Canada, and when they say they want to come to Canada, I feel targeted. I think they're targeting Quebec, and probably Northeast Ontario as well. We're in the same camp, but Agnico, Kirkland Lake, for example, Bonterra, Kirkland Lake is a shareholder of Bonterra. So now it's going to be Agnico. Of course, they're going to be talking to us. They're going to try to see where we're heading with our exploration. So you're going to see the majors, historically in Quebec, the juniors find the deposit, and then the major build and produce, That's been the case for 80 years. So I see the pattern you're going to have, once in a while, you're going to have a junior emerging and become a mid-tier producer, like West Dome, for example. But a lot of time, the majors acquire the assets. So yourself, as a junior, your goal is to make sure that you develop the assets you keep de-risking them. You get the permit, you get the resource, you do the engineering, you get the First Nation agreement in place, you de-risk the entire project. Yeah, it's sad to say someone may come in and acquire it eventually, but that's the business we're in. So But you got to be prepared to develop and construct and build yourself. And you may become one of those mid-tier producer. You know, Anico was Bonterra 40 years ago. You know, Anico started from nothing. I worked in Jutel at Telbel for Anico, and back then, trust me, they were not an $18 billion market cap company. So,
and in the history of the transactions, we have seen in the Abitibi around $12 billion. So I mean, clearly there is a place where in M&A activities there has been a lot of activities, and only in Quebec will be half of that. There has to be for a reason. The amount of M&A that exists in this region, it's where people feel comfortable.
But what does that tell you about the future? Why are you saying that?
No, I'm saying that what we're seeing here is a place where, I mean, this has been built on a matter of M&A. I mean, where we are operating right now in Marban, which is the extension of Camflo, that was the first mine that Berry Gold had when they changed from Berry Petroleum to Berry Gold. Then you see Agnico and Yamana, and their growth going to 600,000 ounces was by buying Osisco Mining in 2014. And then you see El Dorado growing by buying Integra in Quebec as well, in buying Sigma-Lamaque, a mine that was supposedly to be destroyed, but yet another deposit was found just beside it called Triangle. And I'm not trying to do a public cherry, but we have a place there only a couple 100 meters from that. And the fact of the matter is there is a lot of transactions that has been done on the basis of camps that supposedly there is nothing, suddenly a deposit is found, and then the major said, no, give it to me. And it's normal. I mean, we are, you expect that. You cannot be so gullible to believe that that's never going to happen.
Justin, you look like you want to say something.
The difference now, Jose, over the last 30 years is that the producers have real balance sheets now, right? They've paid back their debt, they're buying back their stock, they're increasing their dividends. And, you know, the new Agnico is going to have, $2.8 billion in liquidity. And we have this mid-tier group of producers that are producing between 400 and 750,000 ounces a year all over the world. And what is their goal? Their goal is to de-risk or move to that next level, which is 1 million ounces of production. And you have to do that by buying assets. So I think the Agnico Kirkland Lake deal, if it's shown us anything, is that the race is on for assets right now. And so my colleagues on this recording, we're all doing a good job taking and de-risking our assets. We're not giving them away. We're all building mines. But there's going to come a time when somebody who produces in Africa, their shareholders are going to say, we need to diversify or reduce our geopolitical risk into a jurisdiction where we can work for the long term, where there's stability of cash flow to back up that dividend they're increasing right now. And so from that standpoint, and like Jose, I've worked in Peru, I've worked in South America, I've spent time in Africa and Australia. It's an absolute pleasure to work in Quebec. They try to make it as easy for us as possible.
Gentlemen, I think that's a great place to end. Like I say, I've enjoyed listening to and speaking with you guys over the past few months. I think all of the above stories work for us. Definitely have a look. We'll put the links below to some of the interviews that we've done, and there'll be an article coming off the back of this just to help people understand some of the thoughts that you've shared with us today. Especially like to thank you, Barry, for making time to join these guys. They've got something to promote. You don't. You're here sharing your knowledge freely. So appreciate that, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Quite honestly, Tom, if they don't do well, we don't do well. So
that's true.
There is a commonality.
Okay, guys, the pressure's on. Barry needs you to do even better than you're doing now. Okay, gentlemen, love you and leave you. See you soon.
Thank you.
Cheers.